so generous. They've gifted us this space. They've moved their pool table out the way. So yeah, really, big appreciation to them. So yeah, we're here on this solar Beltane to really celebrate these special elders in our community, Palden and Bar. So that's our main. And yeah, I'm sure some of you, or probably most of you, have heard what we've been doing today. So a group of us, inspired really by Bar and Hamish's work, and it's Hamish's 97th birthday today, so this is another celebration. So yeah, inspired by their amazing work, which I think we're all here for, and yeah, lots of people wanted to join us as well. A group of us, well, we started off tuning into the Michael and Mary line for Beltane, and then as the dragons like to work, they took us in a whole different direction, and we ended up working with the Apollo and Athena line, which I'm not going to go into because Bar's going to share about this. But yeah, a few of us last night worked with the sunset energy at the Apollo and the Athena line as they both come into West Penwith, which Bar will share. And then this morning we worked at sunrise, the Beltane sunrise, to really celebrate their union. And then we took this flame and this energy. The intention of this was to really work with this energy all the way to Jerusalem, to the Holy Lands, to send that peace, to send that love and that union
go to Jerusalem,
into the hearts and minds of humanity at this time on earth, which I'm sure we all really
well, there must be a link into it, obviously.
Celebrate and want that. So, and then we had the most amazing gathering this morning where St Michael's Mount Chapel offered us the chapel privately before the public came in to send songs of peace all the way down through the lines to the Middle East. So it's been a very, very special day, and people all over the world were tuning in at exactly the same time whilst we're in the chapel, all lighting candles with prayers for peace. So this is the background to what's happened today, and very much it's all been inspired by Bar and Hamish's work and all the other people out there, Palden, and all the other people that have been working so hard through the years, to just bring this work to life. So today is a celebration of this, and on this Beltane time, and Lucy's going to share a bit more about this, so thank you so much. And I'll do a little bit.
Yeah, so just to add to what Rachel's saying, as we all know, this is the time of Beltane, where spring has really reached its peak, and we're now tipping over into summer, and we can feel all of that greening energy just spreading through the land, and we can feel this fire rising. And so as Rachel was describing, we were lighting those beacons, those candles this morning on the mount, and that was actually inspired by a vision that Hamish and Paul shared in a book I'm sure lots of you are familiar with, The Sun and the Serpent. So I was just going to share a little part of that now, just to share the vision. So this is when they're dowsing the Michael and Mary line up on Dartmoor, up on Belston Tor. And they talk about Victorian antiquarians had thought an altar to the Venetian sun god Belus had once been set on the spot.
Lucy, are you able to speak up a bit?
Yeah, sure.
The guys at the back. Yeah.
Okay, so they're up on Belston Tor. Victorian antiquarians had thought that an altar to the Phoenician sun god Belus had once been set at this spot. The very name seems to point to ancient rituals once enacted on this crag. For in its simple and literal meaning, Belston would appear to be where a stone of Bel once stood. Bel was the Celtic sun god, Belinus, the brilliant, or Baal. Magnificent fires were lit on the hills of the ancient world to honour him at the high points of the annual cycle, when the goddess, the earth, reflected his glory in the stages of her fertilization and fruitfulness. Such rites would have united the countryside in a common sacred purpose in a way that's never been equalled. The fires were times of joy and celebration for everyone. No one was excluded. It's practically impossible for us today to imagine the total sense of unity that such an experience would have held for each individual, not just at one with his neighbours, but with the rhythm of the heavens. So as they're sitting up onto the top of Belston Tor, they're thinking about this and saying the great fire festivals that were once universal seem to have combined the processes of purification and fertilisation with a recognition of humanity's part in this great process. We're here, we're part of this great dance. We're here to help this whole cycle move. We're part of it all. Cleansing the channels of the spirit and the earth, causing them to flow freely and arousing the planetary kundalini. It's hardly surprising people love bonfires so much, isn't it true? Gathering around an open fire is one of the deepest of all human experiences, dissolving artificial barriers and the cultural conditioning that separates us from one another. It also dissolves time, for the effect of hilltop fires on human minds is uplifting. The centuries disappear as the sparks fly upwards, and a communication takes place between the land, the sky, and the countless ancient people who participate in an act of synthesis and alchemy. Isn't that right? So walking with heads still in the clouds as they're coming down from Belston Tor, it seemed to us a revival of the old fire festivals could be one of the most important ways by which we could restore our relationship with Earth. The merest glimpse of a vision of great fires sparkling like a jewelled web across the countryside, recognising the ancient sites and paths of the Earth spirit was exhilarating. And that was the vision that sparked these Beltane celebrations into life. So we just wanted to honour that and connect back with that sense of us little humans, small as we might be, we've got a part to play in all of this. And there was also a custom, particularly in Ireland at Beltane, where people would put the hearth fires in their homes out and then go and relight them from these communal Beltane fires. So it feels like now is a time where we can blow out the flame, blow out the old stories that are no longer working, and we've got a chance to regenerate that from something, from this new communal flame that we can create together. So we just wanted to share that inspiration and to honour that and to say thank you.
So we're going to do this sharing in two halves. So Bar will start by sharing her journey and adventures with the Apollo and Athena lines and dowsing, and then Palden will share his amazing work, particularly here in West Penwith. So and then there'll be chance for people to ask questions at the end. So with no further ado, we're going to ask Bar to share her love of dowsing. And we were talking before we came here. She's just what dowsing means to Bar and also what it means to all of us. So would you like to start off? Thanks, Bar.
Oh, wow, I'm overwhelmed. I recognise faces that I haven't seen for a very long time, which is great, and thank you. To come and listen to my ramblings, really, I think, but now about I'm so delighted how Rachel and her people have started this off with the lovely singing this morning and yesterday evening at the Gurnard's Head and at Zenor, where the Apollo and Athena lines come from Ireland in and across here and go to St Michael's Mount, where the Michael-Mary line also comes. So they're the four lines, which is very important meeting at St. Michael's Mount, a very strong energy point there. Now, coming back to this topic of dowsing, and how anybody, actually, it's not a thing that just Hamish had or the odd person, anybody can dowse. It's just a matter of really believing, concentrating on what you're trying to find. Now, when we were trying to trace the line down through France, Italy, and Greece to the Holy Land, you had to really concentrate fully on the actual energy of the line that we were, and you feel it within you. Now, before we actually even started, I went and sat on Zena Head, no, not Zena, Gurnard's Head, right on the end, and just sat there to feel that energy. And I eventually felt a kind of a rhythm inside me, and I thought, wow, I've got to hold on to that. And so that when we travelled and we were looking for it, I felt that energy within me and asked my rods, is this energy here? And the rods would answer yes or no, but it was the concentration of that energy that you were feeling what was so important, because Earth energy has its own, each energy has its own kind of signature, as it were. It's like a person's face. We've all got eyes, nose, mouth and hair, but we're all of us are different, and it's the same with the lines. So it's really like checking in to this face, this energy, this single face, and following that, because otherwise you could get really diverted off on a cousin that looked like it, if you know what I mean, but you would be way off. So it was really very important that you kept this specific energy, and it was really tiring, very tiring. So I don't know about talking about Michael and Mary. I didn't join Hamish doing the Michael and Mary, which was 350 miles, as you know, from Carnley's Ball up to Norfolk, which is quite a distance. And Hamish thought, oh, that's easy, it's a straight line, do it in a fortnight, boom. But of course they didn't realise that it was a weaving line, and they got as far as Avebury. They thought it was just one line, but when they were following this one line, it kept doing very odd things. It seemed to go into the ground, come up again and travel on. But when they got to Avebury, Hamish suddenly, whether he was extra sensitive or what, he said to Paul, we've only got half the journey. There's another energy here. We'll have to go back to the beginning. So they had to come back to Carnley's Ball, and there they found, and they gave it another name because it had a different feel, and so they called them the Michael and the Mary line, which they could have called them anything, I mean Tom and Fred, but it was a bit better, Michael and Mary, because it went through Michael churches, and Mary tended to go through the lower places where there were wells and softer places. Michael was on the higher places. But when, that was an amazing example of how one is guided, because if Hamish said, if I had known when we started that there were two energies, we wouldn't have got out of Cornwall. So finding just one until they got kind of really into it, as far as Avebury, Then, when they came back to the beginning, where they found these anemones, where they went into the ground and out, was where they crossed, where the Michael and the Mary crossed, which were creative spots, very, very special. And so they were really kind of shown and guided. Now, when we did the Apollo and Athena, we were told about it by John Michel. I don't know if anyone knows. He was an amazing guy. And he had heard about this other lineup, which goes from a little island off the west coast, Skellig Michael's, and it is about 60 degrees west of north, and it is a corridor, a straight corridor, which swoops down to the Holy Land, and on it, exactly on this corridor, there are about 5 or 6 very sacred Michael sites, which is quite astounding. And it is about 1,500 miles. I thought I wouldn't live long enough to even finish it, but we had a lot of very exciting adventures, and many, many times we were shown enormous help, and out of the blue we were offered incredible help, which made us feel somehow that we were on the right track. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Yes, so shall I leave it there?
No, please, you just started. But are you happy standing? So, yeah, Bar, you've please share your part in discovering the Apollo and Athena line. I really wanted to share that because we hear a lot about Hamish Miller, and obviously that, you know, we really give thanks to Hamish and to Palden and to lots of other dowsers, but Bar is one of these amazing beings who's like, we don't hear so much, and Bar was very, very instrumental in discovering the Apollo and Athena line. So I'm really wanting to sort of bring this out, because some of the stories that Bar shared is so beautiful, and the research that Bar did and the work. So that's what we want to hear. Like, you started telling us about Gernard's Head, and I mean, like, what a thing to sit there and really feel into this line, and then, like you said, the amount of work that took to really feel through the landscape. So, yeah, would you continue the story of what you actually did behind the scenes that, you know, discovered these lines, and then I'm going to ask you some of your particular adventures.
Well, let me just.
I can get that.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh. Actually, this is quite small, but I will kind of hold it up or show it round. This is the line which goes from Skellig Michael's, and in fact at the end you could come and it's really very small, little maplet as it were, but we started, it was a ridiculous time to start, because we thought, well, John Michel had told us about this line, and it was about a dream that 2 Frenchmen had about this line, travelling from the Skelligs. So we thought, okay, we will follow this. So it was in November 1992. Fancy starting in November. It was a ridiculous time to start. We got ourselves on a boat and we got to Ireland. Now, when you want to find a boat to take you out to a rocky outcrop, where do you go to find one? Well, to the pub. So, in Kershaveen, which was the nearest little village with a harbour with boats that took people out to the Skelligs, we went into the pub and we said that we would be very interested if there was somebody that would be able to take us. And there was deadly silence. They said, it is November and we have taken all our boats out of the harbour and we've taken the landing stage off the Skellig, so I'm sorry. And we thought, oh gosh, we've come here specially to go to the Skelligs. Anyway, then a little voice came, oh, wait a moment. There's Roddy, who couldn't take his boat out because something was wrong with the mechanism on the trailer, couldn't fit onto his boat. So his was the only boat left in the harbour. And they gave us his telephone number. So we phoned him, and dear Roddy said, oh, yeah, I'll take you, he said. But there's no landing, you'll have to jump onto the island. So anyway, so we took him up, and we went down, and we got on his boat. But the morning wasn't a very good day, really, to set off. But anyway, we felt we had this offer, and we had to grab it. So off we set, and it was terribly misty, and the sea was very choppy, and we travelled on, and we said, do you think we'll find it? And he turned around, I've been doing these, he said, for over 10 years, and I've never missed it yet. So we went on, and Hamish suddenly said, would you like me to dowse for it, for the rock? And so he looked at Hamish a bit queerly. And anyway, Hamish stood up and dowsed, and he said, you've gone past it. My rod says it's back there. So give him his due. He turned the boat round, and within 5 minutes, out of the mist came this rocky building, this rocky outcrop, where the monks had moved from the mainland in the 5th century because it was too crowded in Ireland, so they went on to this. So he moored the boat, and he said, I'll give you an hour because it's closing in. And we thought, gosh, can't close in much more. So we had to leap onto the island, taking our time to get the waves right. But it was an amazing experience. There were these ancient rounded kind of igloo-shaped stone buildings up at the top where they had made their little monastery and their little gardens. And we found the energy in one of them, which turned out to be the oratory. And there was where the lines met inside this oratory, we picked up a glyph where the energies crossed, and it was like a 4-leafed clover, which filled exactly equally the little building in which it was. So that was the beginning of our trip. And all the way down, we had some amazing experiences. Now, Mont Saint-Michel, for instance, I'll just mention this one. It's the kind of a relation of the one we've got, but has anyone been there? Yes, it's huge, much bigger, isn't it? Very much more commercial, with hotels and houses and loads of little chapels. It's lovely, but I think I prefer ours. So when we landed, we thought, oh my God, this is going to be quite difficult. And we kept finding bits of the energy in little chapels, but we could not kind of get any real grip on the flow of them. And so we thought, well, the best thing to do would be to go to the top, where the abbey was on the top of the mound. So we clambered up the masses of stairs and got to the top. And it was on the 3rd day, this was, after searching and getting really lost. So we thought, right, and Hamish started dowsing in the lovely abbey at the top. And he found the lines crossing in a very inauspicious place in the south transept. And when he said, well, they're here, and Paul, who was going to write the story about the whole thing, said, Hamish, couldn't you have found it in one of those lovely chapels? And Hamish said, Paul, I'm sorry, it's here. So there was it was rather a kind of sad little group that spent the night thinking about that, thinking, I don't know. So we thought, well, we'll go back the next day and go up to the chapel again, the church, the abbey. And there was a man with a toolbox, a kind of workman who was up inside the church. And Hamish went up to him in his fractured French and said, pointed to the ground where he had found the crossing. And he said, is there anything special about this spot? And the workman said, right. And it was, we hadn't noticed it. It was about 6 foot away. There was a trapdoor. And he said, if you lift that up, there are stairs down to the original church that was built. And so Hamish punched the air and said to Paul, see? And it was, we went back, we didn't realise that you could get down to see this or get near to where this crossing was. It was on the next trip when we were going out. We went back to St. Michael's, Mont Saint-Michel, and asked if we could go down to see where the ancient chapel was below, because it was, they called it the chapel sur terre, which is, and we were very grateful. They said, yes, we will, but with not a lot of people. They'd kept the entrance into it locked. But we were taken in, and if we had to go through it was an ancient sound effects, yes. I think it was about a 5th century church that had been, or building that had been there, but it had been full of rubble. And I think it was in about 1906 that they cleared it out and found that there was some ancient frescoes. It had obviously been one of the original buildings on the top of the mound. And inside there were 2 aisles, which we saw at the end of those 2 aisles. There were 2 altars, and one altar was to St. Michael, and the other altar was to Mary. And behind those altars you could see huge, great big cyclopean rocks, which were the very first church that was built, and it was in there that the lines crossed, which was a really exciting discovery. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Bart. And that's just like an absolute spark of just all the work that you did. And I know that you shared with me all the things which again we haven't heard about. And I just wondered if you could share a bit about that. You know, the map reading, you were going to all these libraries, and I mean, literally, you were both going out, all 4 of you were going out blind. You had a rough idea of it, but you had to map where you might go to the next place and the next place. So, yeah, yes. Would you share how you might have worked in that way with this
yes.
rough idea?
Well, after doing Mont Saint-Michel, we realised that we would go take, say, a fortnight out of our lives, had enough money to do this little patch for a fortnight, and we tried sort of flipping from the Apollo to Athena, but it was the concentration of trying to do that was so awful that we then said we would spend about 3 days doing one, come back, and 3 days concentrating on the other. And then before we went home to gather some more money and time to get back again, we went to the local shop that sold maps, and we bought all the maps that we could for the following bit. quite a wide selection, so that when we came home, I then looked at these maps and went to libraries and did a lot of research and plotted where interesting things were, which were possibilities where the line could go. Otherwise, we would have gone back and kind of been at a loss where to go. So we did that then all the way down so that we had an organised way, and we would go to the first one. If it wasn't there, okay. Second one, okay. Third one, okay. And then finally find it. But once we didn't find it, and that was down in Tours, we could not find it. We didn't go through the cathedral. We thought, and anything else that was really kind of looked like a possibility. So we knew the line had to go over the Loire, that river. So we thought, well, we'll park the car and walk down the river bank and see where the line goes over the river. And we found it, and we looked over the road, and there was this huge wall. Sorry, Palden, hitting on the head. And it was coming through the wall on the other side, and we thought, gosh, how on earth do we get into that wall? And then, to our surprise, this is one of the happenings, a little door in the wall opened. And out came some children and nuns. It was a school. And you should see, Hamish and Paul just thought, right, they ran and went in through this doorway. I was a bit slow, and I was caught by a nun. And she was in her French saying, you know, no, 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 no. It was a Catholic school. And I tried in my French saying, I look naughty. Try to explain, if she let me go, I would try and get them back. Anyways, what happened? They shot through, and they found right at the back there was a cliff in which there were troglodyte caves, which was great, but there was a huge ruined abbey, which was the first abbey that was built in Gaul by St. Martin, and it was the Abbey of St. Moutier. And, I mean, that, we would never have found it if that door hadn't opened. So, again, just happy situations. Yes.
Thank you, Bob. So I'm just aware that it's apologies about the sound, everyone. Yeah. So, and I know you've had to do a lot of like speaking up. So
I don't know. Did anyone?
Yeah. You can't help but not hear. But thank you. Have you got time for one last question?
Yes.
Well, and sit down. But it was just you were sharing about how all of us can dowse. Yeah,
yes.
And you were also sharing, just that the role that dowsing has in connecting us with the rest of life, the magic of life. So I don't know if you wanted to share a bit to inspire us all here.
Oh dear. Well, how many people do try to dowse? I'm sure lots of you. Yeah, it's just a matter of trusting and relaxing, because if you're out there, I've got to find, you won't. Neither, if you don't believe in it, you won't either. But it's just having an open mind with a very, very clear visualization of what you are looking for. And once you have found this rapport that you've got, you never go out for a walk or anything or look at the earth in the same way ever again, because you realize how much more out there that you can't see with your eyes or ears, smell or taste. It takes you in to the sixth sense. It's one of the arts that will take you or help you to go in above our five senses into the sixth sense, which makes life so rich. Yes. But anybody can do it, really.
Thank you, Paul. It was great. Did everyone get a chance to look at the map? It's gone round. So a lot of the reason that we really wanted Bar to share about the Apollo and Athena line is because she was very instrumental. She shared just tiny little snippets of, they went all the way to the Holy Lands, and Bar's got some amazing stories to share about when you ended up getting to the Holy Lands. And I think, didn't you nearly get arrested, and lots of things went on there. So
wasn't happy.
and particularly with what's going on today in the Middle East, we can really work with dowsing and work with these earth energy lines, which I don't know as well, but you were talking about it being like the earth's nervous system. Could you just mention that just while we're waiting for Palden to change batteries?
Oh, well, I'm sure you all know this, and I'm teaching grandmother suck eggs or whatever the saying is. The dowsing that we're finding, these lines are really like us, and we have our nervous system with which we can cope with our lives here, and the Earth's nervous system is the lines that we are picking up, and they are the major lines, which these are two of them, the Mary and Michael and the Apollo and Athena. There are many, many more, and they interlink onto smaller ones to smaller ones. It all links up, and it makes the health. So we can use them. Now, today, actually, we were going to have a gathering because it's International Dowsing Day today, and they were supposed to come to my garden and have a picnic, and we were going up the top of Tring-Crom. Some years ago, when we were on the same day, but it was years ago, we went up with Danu. I don't know, many people here can remember. She had a most lovely voice. And we all sat up on the top of Tring-Crom Hill in the Athena line, and Danu sang all the places on the line down to the Holy Land, and we all joined in, and we all felt that we were sending energy, and we were. And this is what we can do, and what Rachel was doing yesterday and this morning. We can activate, and it is like activating and healing a person. It is activating and healing the land. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. So, some of you may or may not know Palden, but Palden has been here in West Penwith for many years, doing some very, very beautiful work. And please share with us now. Thank you.
All right. I might have to sit down after a while. I'm an old cripple nowadays. Well, I'm not a dowser. I'm more of a sort of an energy worker, and I do more of a sort of a psychic thing at ancient sites to try and pick up things that actually happened there. To follow on from where Bar was mentioning, though, I'd like to say something about the Michael line first, because there's a bit of confusion around the Michael line, and it comes from a small, what in retrospect was a slight error really on the part of Hamish and Paul, which is that they gave the same name to the meandering Michael line as applied to the straight Michael line. And I want to talk a little bit about the difference between the two, because these are two different energy systems in a way. The straight Michael line, which was what people like John Michel first mentioned, is a great circle line. It's a slice through the centre of the Earth, goes all the way round the Earth, goes through Russia, eastern Tibet, Angkor Wat, the Olgas in Australia, Lake Taupo in New Zealand, the Maya lands in Yucatan, and then it comes in at Carnless Bowl. So when you're staring out at Carnless Bowl, next stop is the Maya lands. It's places like Chichen Itza and places like that. So that is a straight line. Now people balk and they say there's no such thing as a straight line in nature. Sorry, there is. But actually, these aren't straight lines because they're curving around the Earth.
Yes.
But there is something important here as well, and that is the straight line is not actually a line in the way that the curvy lines would be that dowsers pick up on. It's not the same thing. It is a succession of sites which are aligned in a straight line. Yeah, they're like, if you imagine matchboxes or something across a table, you're putting these different matchboxes across the table. There's no connection between them, but they are programmed with the same algorithm. And this is what in physics you'd call quantum entanglement, where two different items, whether it's two different subatomic particles or two separated twins or different parts of our brain, which, for example, if someone has an accident which makes a division between the left and the right parts of the brain, what happens is that their left and right brain continue communicating even though the linkages between them might have been severed or weakened. And this is this other different kind of energy where you can have different sites which are not exactly connected with a line, but they will do the same thing at the same time. This is different from what dowsers douse, which are distinct energy lines, which have usually a flow in one direction or the other, and they usually flux with the cycles of the moon, season of the year, things like that. And unfortunately, no one's really fully studied that. It's something which would need billions. It would be a pure science kind of thing to really study how that works. But it has definitely been detected, and various people have followed it. But it really needs a lot more study, the way that ancient sites fluctuate in their energy fields. Now, the interesting thing with the Michael line and also the Apollo and Athena lines is that they involve cliff sanctuaries, or what are called cliff castles. St Michael's Mount, Carnless Bowl, Gurnard's Head. Zeno Head isn't actually a cliff sanctuary, but it still works in the same way. Now, why? Why are these important? Well, you've got to go back to the Mesolithic and the Neolithic, when the number of people in Penwith numbered a couple of hundred. All right? It was completely covered with forest. The whole of Britain was 97% covered with forest. All right? So, if you're living in an environment like that, what do? You look for places you can get out of the forest. And there are two main places where that happens in a place like Penwith. One is the headlands, and one is the hilltops. And so what happened when we got to a stage around about 3700 BCE, after an influx of new people who came up from Portugal, when we got to a stage where we started getting into the idea that some places are more special than others, we were beginning to get into the idea of sacred space. That previously, in a way, all the earth was sacred, but then at a certain point people started really realizing that there are some places which are more sacred than others, more special. And so they would wander around a place like Penwith, and they would note these places. They'd hang out there. They didn't necessarily build anything there. They'd have a little clearing, they'd have a bonfire, they'd stick up a pole, or they'd just recognize it as one of the special places. And the kinds of places where these were first really noted were places like Carngalva, St Michael's Mount, Chapel Carn Bray, the prominent hills of Penwith. And then also they'd have noticed the cliff sanctuaries, which again are St Michael's Mount, and going around the peninsula it's places like Kemuel Point, Tryrine Dinas, Tolpedon Penwith, Cornless Bowl. The next one up is Cape Cornwall, and then Cape Conidic, and then we're going over to Pendine Watch, Bosigran Castle, Gurnard's Head, and then St Ives Head. So those are the major cliff sanctuaries of West Penwith. And guess what? These are sacred places. These places were sanctified. They were blessed. They were charged up. And there's something rather amazing here where nature itself has a secret system of its own. It has a strange way of organizing energy. Now, the Earth is a big generator. It's a big energy generator, right? And energy follows the line of least resistance, and it organizes itself into distributaries. When it comes out from the center of the Earth, it organizes itself into distributaries, and it comes up in all sorts of different ways, through the water, through the volcanic rock, through metal veins, things like that. And it comes up particularly at certain places, at certain strong places, and these will be, amongst other things, the hilltops. Trencrom Hill is one of them. You know, and the way to tell this is that when you spend time there, and especially if you tune into it and just let yourself float off a little bit and get into it, when you do that, you go through a very definite change. You know, you can resolve questions that have been bugging you. You come out feeling better. You come out with a smile on your face. Sometimes funny things can happen, like you can meet people, or you can have special things that happen, or all sorts of stuff. And this is a sign of the concentrated energy sphere that happens in one of these places. Now, there are some where it's not so obvious, such as what have become stone circles. And what's happening there is that they are on top of energy vortexes which come up. They're called blind springs or water domes, and they come up close to the surface, and this is energy coming up from the center of the Earth through the medium of water, but it's charged energy. And when I say charged, I'm talking about, well, it's this terrible term earth energy, which is terribly vague, but it's a whole spectrum of different kinds of energy field. And if you imagine the Earth and you dissolve the physical, geological aspect of the Earth, and you look on it as an energy sphere, then it's a sort of a ball, a filigree, swirling ball of different coloured energies which are continually pulsating, continually going around, and they're coming out up to the surface through certain places, through energy spots of different kinds. And the ancients were all, they were tuned into this. You know, they hadn't had the psychological separation that we have gone through throughout history, which has blocked us off from our natural senses and from our imaginal spiritual side, our natural psychic, intuitive, instinctive abilities. You know, nowadays we're so damned educated and civilized that we've lost contact with such an important part of our everything, of our perception of everything. And so the ancients sort of got into this, and they started realizing there were these energy lines going between them, radiating out from certain energy sites and going between them. But they also noticed that some of them were organized in straight lines, like natural sites. Example, St Michael's Mount, Trencrom Hill, St Ives Head, in a dead straight line. There are about 6 or 7 of these, actually. Another one is Cape Cornwall, Carngalva, St Ives Head, exactly aligned with one another. These are geological phenomena. Humans didn't do anything about this, but they noticed the pattern, and they started feeling there's a system to this. And particularly there's something about the cliff sanctuaries, which is rather special. I really recommend, if you live around here, that you make a bit of a project of visiting them. Take a picnic, you know, and a flask of tea and stuff, and systematically go round and visit the various cliff sanctuaries around Penwith. They are special. They're very, very special, and they all have different characters again, you know. And so it's worth paying attention to those, because basically the whole of the megalithic system of Penwith, of stone circles, standing stones, circular enclosures, cairns, and things like that, they are all based on a certain kind of geometry which is strung out between the cliff sanctuaries and also including the hills. And this is quite a remarkable thing. So you get something like, I realised this late at night actually, because I was sitting there having done a lot of geomantic work late at night, and I suddenly thought, St Michael's Mount, yes. Cape Cornwall, yes, they're both hills, rather similar, with a marine context. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I got out my ruler on the map, and doing, right bang on the straight line between the two were the barrows just up behind my house, called Betray Barrows, which are not very well known, but they are fantastic. The energy there is quite amazing, and the panorama is also amazing there, and they're on a dead straight line between these two places. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I got my ruler out, and I started swinging it round St Michael's Mount, and suddenly, boom, boom, boom. Like, now, I've done a lot of work on ley lines, and you do not generally discover 10 in 1 hour. You know, but this was like one of those eureka moments. Suddenly I was noticing, for example, St Michael's Mount, Lanyon, Coit, Pendine Watch. You know, or there was Carnbray over by Camborne, St Michael's Mount, Merry Maidens, Tryrine Dinas, dead straight line. 3 natural sites and 1 stone circle. Obviously the stone circle was put there to augment that alignment, you know. So this starts getting interesting, and so what I was discovering was a new level of alignments which people like John Michel hadn't found. Because John Michel was looking at Bronze Age sites. He was looking at stone circles, menhirs, cairns, and odd places like that. And in Penwith he found 90-ish, and I've checked every one of them. This was in the early 1970s he did this work, and I've checked every one of them, and only 2 don't work out of that. So, you know, he did very good stuff there, and so he uncovered the first level of this, and what seems to have happened is that I've uncovered the second level. Now, John Michel and I were old friends, and we were archaeologists of a certain kind. Basically, we'd go along to an ancient site, have a joint and sit there and take it in. Now, this is a form of archaeological research which actually is really valuable. It is. You notice things, you get stuff, you know. And you know, it's a shame that more people don't do it. But meditation will do. Or letting yourself float off, and I'm sure a lot of you have done it. But give it a bit more time and awareness. Let yourself, you know, when you visit a site, once you've looked around, once you've talked with your friend, once you've drunk your tea, sort of calm down and just let yourself float off and just see if anything comes along, you know. There's one place that I go to in my research, and the being there seems to be really communicative if you are open to it. And the fascinating thing is that this place, most people walk along, take a photograph and walk away. It's Bosiliac Barrow. And Bosiliac is the only barrow which has actually been taken apart and reconstructed by archaeologists, but it's been done really well, and it's as if they woke up the spirit of that place. And if you go along there, and if you have some ancient questions, and if you give it enough time, you'll get some interesting answers. Another place I go to for that is Carnless Bowl, which is the end of the Michael line. And so here we come back to the Michael line. Now the Michael line is a big, great circle line, and in that kind of context, inaccuracies are permissible. It's 25,000 miles long, and so basically you could be talking about inaccuracies of up to 5 miles if you want. The actual straight Michael line passes through the car park at Marazion, just by the cafe. And I don't know if you noticed, but that's got quite an energy there, actually. It doesn't hit St Michael's Mount. The straight one doesn't hit it. Right? But it's only a mile away. And on a great circle line, that's peanuts. Similarly, Glastonbury Tor, it's about 400 yards inaccurate. But it's a corridor. You use the word, it's a zone. And so that's perfectly permissible. Although, interestingly, there is another alignment that comes, and the Michael line from here, it goes from Carnles Bowl to Carnbray by Camborne, then to Helman Tor, and then to the Hurlers before it goes off up through Devon. And if you take another alignment from the Hurlers and put it straight through St Michael's Mount, lo and behold, it hits Tolped Penwith, the absolute southwesternmost point of Britain. So that's a sort of a sub-line to the Michael line, which sort of, perhaps in a way, corrects that slight inaccuracy, in a way. But, so, what we're talking about here is different levels of connectivity and distribution of energy on a global level, which comes through the major things like the Great Circle lines. Then it works through what I call the backbone alignments, which are more regional. The longest backbone alignment I've found from Penwith goes from Carnles Bowl to a stone circle on Bodmin Moor, which is the big one. Sorry, I can't remember the name. It's got about... Stannon Circle, that's it, thank you. Yeah. That's the longest I've found. Oh, I've found another one that goes from St Michael's Mount all the way to Start Point in Devon, which is another one of the cliff sanctuaries, things like that. But they're more on a regional scale. And then we come to the more local scale ones, which were the ones which John Michel discovered. And these, again, can be broken down a little bit into kind of much more major alignments and lesser alignments, sort of thing. Some of them are very small alignments of a couple of cairns and things like that. But again, what they were doing there was simply, when they were locating these things, they were simply lining them up so that somehow they were programmed with the same algorithm. And you know how in the New Age movement we do things like programming crystals. Well, they were doing it with menhirs and with sites. But they were doing it much better than we do. Much better. They'd work at this over years and generations. They would have ways of concentrating, which were far in advance of our flighty minds that we have now. You know, when we do earth healing, we all go along to a place and we all hold hands and sing and everything like that for an hour or two, and then we all dash off again, you know. And yeah, that's fine. But you know, when they were opening up the stone circles, they really worked on these over generations. And when you go to somewhere like Tregeseal Stone Circle, that was in operation for what, about 1,200 years? And if you count 5 generations per 100 years, then you're talking about a lot of different people with a lot of different ways of seeing things over the time, even though their basic worldview was quite consistent through the Bronze Age, you know. So this is interesting, really. So we have this sort of energy distribution system. And what was all this about? This is about consciousness engineering. It's a kind of an advanced shamanistic notion, which is that you can change the laws of reality by doing consciousness work. You can move onto a different frequency. I mean, to my surprise, I've found myself to be an example of this, because I shouldn't be alive now. You know, I pretty much died 5 years ago with cancer, and I've gone through 4 or so death experiences since then, and I shouldn't really be here. But it's basically because I've been doing inner work with myself, particularly with what I call my inner doctors who work on me, but all sorts of other things. And you'll know a lot about the ways you can do that. But, you know, when I got cancer, I was really faced with it. You know, come on, what are your beliefs really about? You know, can you really do this thing? You know, can you do this healer, heal thyself thing? Well, thus far, it seems to have worked. And so you can change. You know, my doctors are continually surprised. You know, at the moment, I'm not on any cancer medication at all. And the specialist in Trelisk was saying to me just last week, she was saying, I don't know how you do this, Mr. Jenkins. You ought to be deteriorating. You know? And so it's fascinating, all that. So the ancients had this much better than we did. When you were training to be a druid, you'd spend 20 years. You know, you'd spend significant times in isolation. You'd go through quite rigorous training. And also their psyches were much more stable and focused than ours are. We're really all jumbled up, and, you know, we're quite swirly in our consciousness, you know, which has its virtues too. And so they were doing engineering in order to engineer consciousness. So you go to someone like, say, a chambered cairn, and chambered cairns in Penwith were big enough to lie in, and you could go inside, the door would be closed, you'd stay there for a week or two or whatever, or for a moon cycle or whatever it would be. It was located on top of an energy vortex, and yet it was functioning also like a Faraday cage. It was totally insulated from the vibrations of nature, so you'd be in this kind of energy bath. And in fact, one of my theories, which I think works, is that these places were used for dying, for what we would now call conscious dying. You know, because what better way to leave your body consciously than to use an energy field to do that. But they were also for other things too, such as treating tinctures, sharpening tools, treating your seeds so that you can raise them up, increase their storability, increase their fertility. Now, there's been a lot of parapsychological work on this kind of thing, which has demonstrated that that happens. You know, you can get one bunch of seeds that have been in the hands of a healer who's blessed them and done all the right things with them, and another bunch of seeds where they haven't had it, and they plant them both, and lo and behold, the ones that have been blessed grow to 3 times the height, this kind of stuff. So the ancients knew this kind of stuff, and they used these chambered cairns for this. So that was an inward kind of consciousness engineering. And they would, after a while, they would open the door, and some of the chambered cairns were oriented on things like the solstice sunrise, for example. So imagine, you know, if you've been inside there for a month, and the door is opened on midsummer sunrise.
Need sunglasses.
What an amazing experience that would be, you know, especially on the right kind of mushrooms and things like that. Well, you know, this is a very real thing. I call them mind medicines. And so there would be that kind of thing. Similarly, wells and fogus would have a similar purpose. They'd be down in kinds of things. But then you go to somewhere like Cairbrain, which is a circular enclosure on top of a hill. The fascinating thing there is that it's in a panoramic place, but when the enclosure was fully operating, it's been eroded a bit now, and it probably had something like a hedge on top of it, or a stake fence or something. But when you were inside it, even though you were in a panoramic place, you wouldn't see the rest of the landscape. Either that, or only the far landscape would appear just above the enclosure. But you'd get quite easily, and you'd also get a sense of down. Right, so that's a different engineering of consciousness. I think Caerbrain was actually the Parliament site for the whole of Penwith. I think it was the place where they met up once or twice a year to sort out all the issues that were needed. And the other big gathering place is Castle Andinas, which was probably more of a trading and a fair kind of place for more celebrations. And in fact, interesting little factoid, there's another enclosure which has been discovered at Pordenac Point. Pordenac Point is a very special place, especially for social occasions. You know, I don't know if you've been there, but you can really feel gatherings of people there and happy, or even singing, you know, on the cliff tops. But there's a circular enclosure there, and guess what? That enclosure, Caerbrain, and Castle Andinas are exactly aligned with each other along the midsummer sunrise point. Interesting stuff. So that was another kind of energy. Now you look at a stone circle, and a stone circle is a containing field. There's a different feeling when you're inside and outside. And I'd quite recommend when you next go, approach slowly, stop outside, just get a feeling what it is, then stand exactly on the edge, get a feeling of that, and then step inside and get a feeling of that, and then step out again. And get a feeling, because it's a concentrated energy field inside a stone circle. And that's made up with an energy vortex that comes up from the earth in a blind spring, which is concentrated by the stones, which each themselves have spirals of energy coming up them. And then it becomes a sort of an energy field where modern instruments can detect some things such as radiation levels, which are much lower inside a stone circle than outside. Now, the interesting thing with a stone circle is it's not a wall or a bank or anything like that, it's just a bunch of stones. But they create this energy field, which is really quite strong. And these places are consciousness and magical generators. Inside these places, they could do large-scale ceremonies. You know, imagine Tregursil, 250 people. They've been doing this for generations. They're gathered around the stone circle. They've been fasting for a day. They've probably had some magic mushrooms or something like that. And they start working themselves up into a chant and a dance. And then inside the stone circle, there are some early druids or something doing some work inside there. Now, what would they have been doing? One of the things would be surgery. Psychic surgery, healing. Just as it is today, medicine was a key issue. They just triumphantly, wow, isn't this amazing, discovered that an orangutan, just last week, an orangutan is able to apply medicine to itself. Mm-hmm. Yes, very good. This is natural to humans. You know, the cattle on our farm do it as well. And so they'd do that. They'd also be able to do long-distance communication. Now, the whole of Britain in megalithic times was essentially one nation. And this is visible in the ancient sites, because although they're all very, very unique, they all operate by similar principles right across the nation. And there was obviously a lot of wandering around, because it took a lot of expertise to make these sites, and this wasn't the kind of expertise that the locals could just know. But there's also this long-distance communication thing, and that is that if you're psychic, if you go into a low-radiation place, such as a crypt or a cave or a chamber or a Faraday cage, then basically your capacity for communication is much, much greater. Right? You'll find this in stone circles too. Take note of the people who come up in your awareness while you're there. You know, be mindful about what's going on in your consciousness while you're in a stone circle, because it's all kind of significant, this stuff. And so that's another kind of engineering form. Similarly with solid cairns. They weren't so much for human use, they were more for geomantic use, but a lot of them again were sitting on top of a vortex. They might have been aligned up with other sites and things like that. And these were biogenerators, which is why a lot of them have been dug out, because farmers thought, wow, this is amazing soil, so let's have some of that. And they would, again, work with the energy connectivity across the earth. So what I'm saying here is that the ancients were really in touch with a kind of technology we need to look at now. Because here we are, we've created this thing called the internet, which is our substitute for psychic communication. But it requires all these wires and all these fibre optic cables and things like that. And there's that story about an Aboriginal who met a British or an Australian guy in the middle of the desert, and the Australian was so proud about the new telegraph wire that had been set up, and he was showing the Aboriginal what it was, and the Aboriginal said, yeah, what's it for? And he said, well, we can communicate with people at a long distance. He said, yeah, but why do you need the wires? So there are things like that. And then there's working with the climate. Now, we have all prayed for rain, or we have all done various things like this ourselves in our own ways. And some of you will have had demonstrations that it can work. That weather and consciousness work can have a strange way of coordinating with one another. So there's that. There's also working with the inner components of matter, of nature. You can charge up seeds, for example, by doing this inside a stone circle. You can raise the level. Now, this is the same as our genetic research, where we're busy gene editing and all this kind of thing. And so a lot of the technologies we are practicing today, space travel is another one, right? A lot of the technologies we're practicing, the expensive technologies, they were available to people in another way. And these people were, in some ways, a very, very advanced civilization who were onto something that we need to learn now. Because we have a problem in this world, as you well know. And one of the things is, yes, we can do all the things we know we need to do with, say, the ecosystem, to regreen the planet, to redesign our cities, to change our land use, all of the things that we're starting to do, and we need to do it on a planetary scale. But the next step after that involves working with energy itself, subtle energy itself. We've got to make the world happy. This is what, if you remember the Coggy 30 years ago from Colombia, who were saying, we are the elder brothers and we have been maintaining the soul of this world for a long time, and we can't really continue like this because you people are destroying too much. You're taking the blood out of the planet by extracting oil. You're chopping down the trees. It's becoming too big a task for us. And there's this whole deeper thing, which is in a way what you were doing this morning, which is singing up the lines, and it's making Gaia more happy. This is at the core of what they were really doing. They were really working with consciousness in a shamanistic kind of way. And so I'm going to leave it there, apart from just one more thing, and that is this. West Penwith is a really neat little area, actually, as far as megalithic stuff is concerned, because it's surrounded with cliffs on three sides, and it's also got a very clear boundary on the eastern side, which is that the line of St Michael's Mount, Trencrom Hill and St Ives Head. Cross that line and you're out. Do you know where you cross it on the A30? It's right by the post office in Crowlas, that's it. Yeah, when you're just by the village store and that zebra crossing, that's where the line crosses the A30. That's where you're leaving the energy field that is Penwith if you're driving eastwards. or re-entering it, you know. And so it's a very, very concise, neat area. And what they did basically was all these quoits and all these stone circles and all these menhirs, they're not separate ancient sites. They're all part of one big machine, one big energy machine. And it's sort of strung out on the cliff sanctuaries, and it's pinned down by the ancient hills like Carngalva, Trencrom Hill, Chapel Carnbray, Carncanidgic, places like that. And so those, in a way, hold it down and create the natural connection. And then the ancient sites that were built, particularly in the Bronze Age, the stone circles, the menhirs, what have you, these have enhanced this whole thing. They've really built it up. And so they created a complete geomantic system in Penwith. And in that sense, we can look on Penwith as one big ancient site, one big cliff sanctuary. And this, although a lot of fuss and bother is talked about Stonehenge, largely because it's close to Oxford University, basically Penwith is shit-hot competition. except the academics up country, all the males who all want to be the big one who discovers this and that. They don't notice, because we're down here. But there are about 15 other areas across Britain which are megalithic concentration points. The next ones up are Bodmin Moor and Dartmoor. And then you get to the Cotswolds, the Mendips and Cotswolds, and then you get to Wiltshire, and then you're going up country towards places like Shropshire. You've got a few patches in Wales. You've got bits on the Pennines. You've got the North Yorkshire moors, and then you're going up into Scotland, and you've got concentrations there too. And there are about 15 such areas, and Penwith is a key one. And of course it was more key before than it is now, because in the days when there were no roads, no towns, and it was largely forested in Britain, the best way to get around was by sea. And guess what? Penwith was right in the way. It was directly between Brittany, Ireland, Wales, and so it was really at a focal point. And it had this added thing, which was the tin, which was used for the making of bronze, which in a way globalized Penwith. And so although it's a very, in a way, isolated, self-contained area, it also had quite a bit of contact with other places, especially St. Michael's Mount, which is where they would kind of call in, And St. Michael's Mount, of course, only became an island around about 1700 BCE, because sea level rise has been quite a big thing here. The Scillies are gradually disappearing into the sea, because since the Bronze Age, the level of the sea has risen about 12 feet here. And so you look at a lot of the beaches, for example, and they used to go a lot further out. And the old name for St. Michael's Mount was the Grey Rock in the Woods.
Carreg Lwysicws.
Yeah.
Carreg Lwysicws.
Yeah. And so it was surrounded with woods. I suspect it was probably a tsunami, which general sea level rise, but a tsunami would have knocked it out. And lo and behold, there's a big tsunami zone down in the Canary Islands and Portugal. And Penzance is still in danger from one of those. Because it would come up Mounts Bay and it would pile up and it could really do some damage. The people of Penzance will need to respond quickly when the warning comes. Get uphill. From the west, we're not so affected. There's a tsunami zone just off the southwest of Ireland, but basically we've got all these cliffs, and so we'd get some big dramatic waves, but no one really would get harmed. The people who would get harmed by that are further up the Bristol Channel, and places like Somerset would get it in the neck. There was a big tsunami in 1608, I think it was, and something like 20,000 people were killed around the Bristol Channel. But it sort of just went past Cornwall, that one. So anyway, so what I'm saying is that Cornwall is one big ancient site, and so it's no wonder that these two, what are presumably global lines, come through Cornwall. It makes a lot of sense. In fact, I've done a lot of work out in the Middle East, and one of my favourite ancient sites in the Middle East is a place called the Citadel in Amman in Jordan. And it's amazing there because, we think we've got a lot of history here. We've got 5 or 6 layers of history in most places. Well, out there they've got 15 to 20, They even have the British Mandate layer, which is 25 years of British concrete and iron and stuff like that when we ruled that area. But the Athena and Apollo line, after Megiddo in northern Israel, they proceed on to the Citadel in Amman. And logically, if anyone had the ways and means to do it, it would go through Iran and it would go through northern India and God knows where after that. But I presume, but I don't know, that it's another great circle line.
Well, I think it would be, yes. Yeah.
There was
we didn't follow it into Jordan. No. We left it.
Well, it starts getting
Medigo.
big. Yeah, it starts getting big, and once you start getting to India and places, you'd be into another zone. But anyway, so that's what this whole energy engineering, this whole advanced level shamanic stuff that these people were involved with was much more advanced than archaeologists and historians would like to acknowledge. And these people were advanced in their concepts and their inner life, but they didn't necessarily build cities and roads and things like that, So thanks.
You stood too all that time. Well done.
Thank you so much, Palden, because Palden, as he's shared, has not been well, so to stand and to share his work is such a privilege. So, please, And I'm sure, I don't even know where to. There's so much in that Palden, and Palden has created. He's recorded this talk, and you've also got podcasts and things. So Palden really wants to get this out there in the world, and he really wants to share. So I'm sure there's people here who'd be interested. I don't know if he's going to have energy to talk after this, but maybe we could sort of connect in with his podcast and website, and maybe try and take some of this work out there, because it's. You're just scratching the surface, and it's amazing what you've done, so thank you so much. Thank you.
So there is a website about this which I've made, which is called ancientpenwith.org. Just trying to remember ancient Penwith.
So, we've got a little bit of time left, and I'm aware we've been sitting and listening, and Palden and Paul probably just need a little break. So let's just have 2 minutes, not too long, because I know we've got to kind of come to an end. So I'm sure there's people with questions here. So 2 minutes to just go to the toilet, grab a drink, and just come back, so we're not sort of dispersing. And then, please, share some questions of these two amazing elders. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you. So I'm sure there's people here with questions. So we've got about 15 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer. So is there anyone?
I hope they're all for you, not me.
Bar really wants you not to ask her questions, but we do want to ask her questions, don't we? So she's not going to get out of it. So, does anyone put your hand up? Yeah.
I was just interested in the dragon line, because obviously it's called the Michael line, but where the dragon part came in.
Okay, thank you. So, in case other people didn't hear, what's your name? Sarah's asking about the dragon lines and what's the term dragon lines? What's that about? Bar, would you like to start with that? What's your why the word dragon?
Well, I think that just the way in which people can refer to these lines which flow through the earth. We met a group of dowsers when we were in France at Chartres, and they called it the weaver, like a worm. Yes, they were chasing. It is, I think, just a name that people put to recognise these weaving energies that flow through the land. Yeah.
Howden, is there anything you want to add to
No.
that?
You reckon that was a good answer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Correct answer, Tim. Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions?
I was intrigued in the book.
Yes.
When you did some energy work at Bourges Cathedral, and it mentioned that you had quite a significant sort of moment, and I wondered whether you remembered what was happening.
Well, that was Bourges Cathedral was the next crossing place, actually, after Mont Saint-Michel. And of course, Bourges is the geographic centre of France, which we never thought of, really. And in fact, when we were dowsing the line through the cathedral, we saw it was going along, and on the ground there was a metal strip put into the ground, and that was the old meridian line, which our dowsing picked up, and obviously that was it. I can't remember but I think also we found, it was at Bourges, that when we had dowsed the glyph off Ireland, Skellig, I said it was like a four-leaf clover. I think when it got to Bourges, the edges of the clover, the bits, they became wavy and out and wavy. They changed there. And it changed as we went on down at some of the crossing points. I can't remember having an amazing, other than that, I'm sorry.
That was amazing. Thank you. Anyone else with any questions?
I was wondering, Palden, when you were saying about the sites, kind of that quantum entanglement, and then kind of being able to kind of communicate in that way, do you feel that was a civilization that were aware, like at Chichen Itza or Machu Picchu, all these different sites, that they were aware they were communicating cross-culturally, or it was a global civilization?
No, I don't think.
I'm not sure about that. I think it's a different bunch of civilizations who came upon similar kinds of ideas. There is, I wouldn't totally rule it out though, because there are clues of at least small numbers of people who held the knowledge through many long times. So I wouldn't exactly rule it out, but I think it's more people in different cultures coming up upon the same principle independently, basically, because these are patterns of nature.
Yes. So they were more in tune.
Yes, and they're classic archetypes which are, in a sense, cross-cultural. So the idea of a pyramid, for example, the idea of a sphere, and what have you. I mean, you come down to the British did have very advanced mathematics, which were later on ascribed to Greeks such as Euclid and Pythagoras and people like that, and Meton with the Metonic cycle. The British knew all this stuff at least 2,000 years before the Greeks ever came along. Whether it got passed to the Greeks, it's probably so, but it's also possible that it was just simply independently come to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else thoughts?
Hiya.
Hello.
When it comes to, like, the Michael line being a maritime car park and not could it be like our own nervous system? If it's injured, does it? I mean, I know they move a little, but could it remake itself over like hundreds, millions of years into a slightly different wave?
Yes, I'm not sure if it's absolutely necessary.
No.
With the straight alignment, I mean the meandering alignments both go to St Michael's Mount,
Okay.
and in a way they're bringing it down into a more physical level. I don't know if I'm saying the right thing there, but there's a sort of a difference of level where the straight alignment, these inaccuracies aren't really important because the energy field of St Michael's Mount is sufficient, and nature does have this way of always being a little bit different everywhere. And so I wouldn't regard it as a problem as such, especially since we're talking about a great circle line which really is big and quite wide. So you can have a leeway of several miles, which would not be a problem at all. There's nothing wrong with that. I would think actually it's the meandering lines which are capable of moving more as a result of damage than the straight alignment, which will carry on anyway because it's not actually a line.
Yes.
Yeah, it hasn't got...
Yeah, both of you, yeah.
Yes, Annie, I know somebody tried to move the line accordingly in Glastonbury because they were rather miffed that you had to pay to get into the Abbey, so they tried to move it into the High Street. But I honestly, I think you could, move it maybe a little bit. They do expand and shrink with the moon, and if we douse behind a church that has just had a service, the energy is much, much wider, and then it gradually comes down to its normal sort of constant in and out breathing kind of thing. Yes, so I don't think they would be too affected. No.
It's a little bit arrogant,
yes.
That really.
Yes.
Could...
Actually, all Earth energy is completely benign. It's what we do to it that we can alter and destroy it,
Well,
or
also,
whatever, or change it.
I lived in Glastonbury for 28 years, and I was very central in it. And one of the things we had, there were about 40 of us who basically held the energy in town on an inner level. And we used to get quite a few of these people who were coming along to fix Glastonbury because of things they disapproved of.
I know.
Without really realising that the character of Glastonbury is about the light and the dark. As is Jerusalem, actually. Jerusalem is very similar. You can have amazing, very high experiences in Jerusalem, and then you walk out the door and there's gunfire going on.
Yes.
It's really quite strange. And so they're very similar in character in that particular way. But the idea that we can come along in a few hours and change something that's been there for thousands of years is a little bit...
I was more thinking over millennia, really, whether, I'm sure maybe Earth does have things.
Well, you can modify energy,
yes,
certainly.
Yes.
At least on a smaller scale, and it has been demonstrated when people have built new stone circles or labyrinths, it has been demonstrated that energy moves towards them and refocuses, But in a way, you're not really changing anything, you're just bending it a bit.
And of course, in house healing houses where people have energies going through their house that disturb them and eventually can make you ill with not being in sync with the flow of the energy. And as you know, you can do house clearing, just asking the energy to be changed to a healing energy. But so yes, but that is just more or less the local. It's earth energy is everywhere. It's like dowsing for water underwater. It's everywhere. Yes.
I've got time for probably 3 more. So, yeah.
I was just going to ask a kind of continuation from the last question. I really like what you said, about just asking the energy to become a healing one. You know, that along a lot of the Mary and Michael, and particularly, you know, there's these big churches that are built on the maybe older pagan sites.
Yes.
And sometimes I and other people get maybe a sense that there's this like other culture that's kind of put its dominion over these old, you know, these older sites that maybe were like a freer or a very different tradition. And I was just wondering, how can we like, or if it's even needed to like go these places. For example, I'm thinking of St. Vivien here in Penzance. That's got a church, and in the centre, and it's got this spoken wheel with loads of ley lines. You know, but a lot of people say there's a sense of like that energy maybe needing to be renewed or like healed. I was just wondering if there's any advice on that, or if that needs to be done. Or...
Well, I think you just ask, really. Because when you are healing a house, for instance, it may be just one person in that house that is affected, and the other people can't understand why this person is always tired and doesn't like a certain room or something. And when you go to change that energy, you don't want to change it so that it will then affect the other people at the expense of the one that you've moved to try and help to heal the one that was affected. So Hamish always used to, he had a plan of calling it the management, which is asking the powers that be that can see the bigger picture and asking them. He was the instrument through which it could work to change it to a healing energy for even the bugs under your feet. And the line that goes through was a healing energy for everybody concerned. And I suppose that would be the same in the church, really, with all the different religious ideas. Just have it that it was acceptable. If that makes any sense to your question. Yes.
I think it's important also that you were touching on this, the attitude is really important. Because we're working with nature and with things that we don't fully understand. And so, for example, when we're talking about healing a site, what do we actually mean by that? I had this when I got cancer, actually. I was fortunate enough to have lots of people sending me Reiki and healing and putting me in the centre of their circle and all these kinds of things. But there were instances where I felt messed around with. And I had to write in my blog, please don't pray for me to get better, pray for me to get through. Because otherwise people were putting a certain prejudice into it, which is their fear of death.
Yes.
And the strange cultural idea we have, which is that dying is some sort of a failure. And that is a judgment which is not actually correct. You know, and it's the same with earth healing.
You want the bigger picture.
Yes, it's the highest good which is important. So we might have a concept of what might be needed, and we can certainly put that forward, but it's an interaction with nature and the spirits and with what is right in the long term, beyond our own ways of seeing things. So it's this thing about be careful what you pray for. I mean, I had an interesting thing. I did some work around the school in Bethlehem. We were just close to the security wall, and we were getting problems from the settlers on the other side of the wall. They were encroaching. And so I did some classic earth healing work around the school. It worked. The problem was they went round the corner and started attacking just down the road instead.
Yes.
And so, and I realised, well, in this kind of place, this is really, really big and deep, and you can't mess around with it too much, But I should say that protection around the school still seems to hold 12 or 15 years after I did that work.
That's great.
But the problem is they've gone around the corner.
Yes, you need a bigger picture.
Yeah. And also, when we start doing this kind of thing, in a way we need to start doing it globally. This is a thing for the future, because you might sort of raise the energy in an area like Penwith, for example, but if it starts going up the lines, what are the consequences that you can be setting off when these lines cross the motorways and go through nuke stations and all these kinds of things? We have to get a sense. It's difficult to answer these questions, and we should nevertheless go forward with this kind of thing, but we've got to do it in a very receptive, interactive kind of way for the highest good and the longest and greatest benefit.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I did say there's room for more questions, but I think we are actually coming to an end, and that felt like a really good ending, actually, to really stay with that and just really contemplate that and just let that kind of percolate, because that's what's really being asked of us, isn't it, at this time? And I think Bar and Palden have been just really sharing your amazing work, and then really inspiring us and others for how we can continue with this. So thank you. And we haven't quite ended. We're just going to end with just a deep appreciation for your work, both.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately they're in plastic wrapping because it's Sunday, but they are beautiful local-ish flowers.
Fantastic.
So I just want to thank you both. Thank you so much. And to John, Michelle, and all the people behind the scenes, and the ancient ones and the indigenous ones and our ancestors who've brought us to this point, and that we now become the new ancestors. So
there's one other person I'd like to mention, actually, and that's Cheryl Straffen, who has held she's held the whole thing together here for decades.
Yes, she has.
And so I'd like to bring her in as well.
Thank you.
To the circle.
Bought her book from the tin mine.
Right, and also I live on a farm towards West Penwith, and you can find me easily online, and I serve quite good tea. But only for ones and twos.
So what we'll do is we'll share Bar and Palden's, because Bar's and Hamish set up parallel communities, which I'm sure most of you will know about, but we'll share things on WhatsApp and email. And just to come to this completion of this really special gathering and this day that we've shared, there's going to be a really beautiful thing continuing from this that starts at the Tolkien Inn, 7:30, which is in Newlyn. There's going to be the May Horns Beltane celebration, all the way processing along the this line, the promenade, with horns and merrymaking. So please join in that. They're going to go all the way to the to Chapel Street, to the Union, and they'll end up there probably sort of 8:30. So please join in this. And just sending all this out with a song that Lynn's is going to share. We sang in the chapel, and Lynn's so let's just really with our hearts send out this beautiful feeling to the Middle East and all the way around the lines. Thank you.
And thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and Lindsay. And the yacht, and Charlie for filming. Thank you.
So maybe if we all stand up, it's nice to, yeah, get a bit of movement there in the lounge. So yeah, we've all heard the importance of singing to the land, so let's put it in action. And I'll do a call and response, so if I sing the first line, you guys come back and then we'll flow with it. It's a beautiful song by Susie Rowe, the daughter of Nick Crater, and yeah, it's been sung all over, so especially in Glastonbury, especially in Avalon. So let's go. Sing to the land, sing to the land, and the land will hear you, and the land will hear you. Sing to the land, sing to the land, and the land will know, and the land will know. Sing to the land, sing to the land, and the land will hear you, and the land will hear you. And sing to your heart, and sing to your heart. All the songs, all the songs of the land, of the land. Should we go for it all together? Yeah. Sing to the land, and the land will hear you. Sing to the land, and the land will know. Sing to the land, and the land will hear you. And sing to your heart all the songs of the land.
Yeah, just really wanting to thank these amazing women, Linz and Lucy, like the amount of work that has gone into today, this morning and this afternoon, so, and to Charlie and also to Jess, so thank you so much.
Share a little bit of the synchronicity and the magic. I was walking from Norfolk to Cornwall at the same time on the Mary and Michael line as Lucy was walking in the other direction. We'd never met and now we're here.
Magic of the line. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. So yeah, just send the love out. And there was a question about dowsing and learning to dowse. So I'll speak to Bar and there's Trencom dowsers, and I'll send it out in emails and WhatsApp, different information. Yeah, stay in touch. Thank you. Happy Beltane.
You've done.
To say thank you. It's so fascinating. A lot of threads together. Yeah.
Great. Do you live locally?